All right, let's wrap up some series discussions. I have really been bad about keeping my head on my series situation right now. Like, I haven't even done my winter series TBR yet. We'll get there eventually. Maybe this season will be an audible and I'll get back into it in the spring. But I finished 11 series, or got caught up with 11 series, because some of them I for sure are going to be continued. But some of them I'm not sure. They could, they couldn't. I have no clue. Right now, they're finished for me. And I thought I would go through them from least favorite to favorite. Chances are, if I've made it to a final book in your series, or am I continuing it, I like it. I don't think any of these are like, oh my god, I hate them. So, like, ordering them is just for funsies, I guess. But I want to start with my one reread. There was a series I reread this year, and it felt weird to, like, rank it, because it's one of my favorite series of all time, so, like, I don't know. And if I did that, then I just had 10 I had to rank. So it just felt good. And so that's the Inheritance Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I buddy read this with my friend Laura. And so I reread all three books, the novella that happens after those books, and the little short story collection that is associated with that series. And I just love it. I finally revamped my Should You Read for that series. It was one of my first Should You Reads, actually. I don't know if I've privated it or not, but like my first Should You Read on this channel was for the Inheritance Trilogy. And boy, what a challenging series to try and talk about. I'm a little better about it now, but I don't know. It's just Jemisin's thought experiment of how immortal beings and humans would coexist and how communities and societies would evolve through that coexistence. And we start in a time period where the immortal beings are enchained. Their powers are only used by the elite ruling class. And we have someone who's coming in who is a part of the ruling class, but also ostracized and kind of probably meant to be a sacrifice, and how does she maneuver that space? All three books are different. They take place, huge time jumps in between them. I love the characters. I think the third book hit even harder this time. Traditionally, my favorite in the series is the second book, The Broken Kingdoms. I still love Ore. I still love the kind of romantic, like platonic relationship we explore in there. But like, yeah, the whole thing is just so much better for me than the sum of its parts sort of thing. Is that how the phrase goes? I don't know. There are some 4-star books in it, but the whole thing is like a 5-star experience, is what I'm meaning to say. So that was lovely. I'm so glad I made time to reread it, because I just had been having the itch for a while, because like, hadn't read it since 2020, and I just really wanted to. So then, coming in at number 10, it's technically I finished this duology, and that's the Clockwork War duology. It has Clockwork Boys and Wonder Engine. It's T. Kingfisher. It's the beginning of the World of the White Rat, which is, I think, a larger universe with many series in it. And I really liked the first book, and was a little let down by the second book. This is the duology that a lot of people wish was made as one book, or maybe edited differently. I don't have those same complaints. I just think I really enjoyed the first book more. I think I liked the character interactions more. I think my characters were making less dumb decisions in the first half. I think the horror elements were cooler in the first half. So I just think I liked the first half of the duology more than the second half. And because of how much I liked the first half, I was let down. That said, I love T. Kingfisher. Like, she's one of my most read authors of last year. So it's going to continue. I will continue on in the World of the White Rat soon. All right, next up at number 9, I have no, like, complaints about this, but when I was thinking about where to place it, I was just like, I think actually when I was ranking this list, now I'm remembering, I based it off how well did it stick the landing, because I'm a big endings person, and I had to pick something arbitrary to rank on, because some of them I read a lot of their books this year, some of them I only read the last book, so I was just like, did it stick the landing? And so Wonder Engine was my least favorite last book. And so that's why it's number 10. This next one, I love the first book of this duology, and I would reread it, and I don't think I would ever reread the second book. And if more books came out in this world, I might read them, I might not. And am I pronouncing sorry? It's the Tian Chronicles. This is, the first book is A Strange and Stubborn Endurance, and I don't even remember the name of the second book. Is it called The Hidden Path or something? Both of these are following the same romantic pairing. And in the first book, it's an arranged marriage. It's recovery from trauma. It has a lot of my buzzwords. There's like kind of this mystery in the background to like make sure our main characters are able to interact with each other and go through stuff. Now the second book, they got together at the end of the first book, but nothing is completely fixed because they both bring their own baggage to the relationship, and then there's more political stuff, and so they get to travel. We get to see them unpack some of their communication problems. It's a good read. I just didn't love it as much as the first one. Like, the first one sticks with me. The second one, I forgot I read. So, but I do think it does give a good, like, second happily ever after. Like, you had a happily ever after in the first book, but, like, a second one where the relationship is getting to go down its natural path. Next up, we have Sworn Soldier. So this is another T. Kingfisher. It's the second book with the, What Moves the Dead? Is that the name of that book? We're following this character back in their own homeland, and it's more paranormal haunted house folklore-ish. I liked it. It was fun. But again, do I think it's more like an ending? I don't know. It was just a continuation. I liked its type of horror a bit more than gothic horror. Maybe I would read more in the series if more came out. But it doesn't leave like a lasting impression in my head. Now, granted, I read this in a very depressing time of the year. But I also read this while driving in the fog, and that was ideal. So it had both pros and cons going for it. All right, number 7? Is that what we're looking for? Ah, yes. This is the definition of this series is fine. And that's the Chilling Effect series. I think it's good. I like that it's a very fun adventure science fiction that is pretty accessible, I feel, to a lot of people. It's a little plot-driven for my taste. I would like a little more character-driven of a story, but I had fun. I don't think Fault Tolerance is my favorite. I think my favorite in the series is the second book, which is also why it's maybe lower down the list if I'm ranking by last book. The second book has the most animal companion, and I was all in on the animal companionness. Mala is my favorite psychic cat. She is so cute. I also just think there were missed opportunities in the third book to explore some dynamics that they teased. Like, if they didn't tease the dynamics, then we didn't, I wouldn't feel, cheated. But I do feel a little cheated. And, I'm, like I said, I'm just not as plot-driven of an individual, so I just feel like, everything's ramping up, and I feel like the average reader would be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, and I'm just like, I am so exhausted by how many plot events I'm having to somehow compile in my head right now, without any of, like, the emotional connection I would like to feel. Alright, 6. This is a really fun one. I really like this one. So this is the sequel to The Space Between Worlds, and again, do we know if there's more that's going to happen in this world? I have no clue. We didn't even know we'd get this book. This book takes place after the first book, and I would say you'd have to read The Space Between Worlds before reading this. I didn't reread The Space Between Worlds. I was fine. I think some people who reread it had a worse experience with Those Beyond the Wall. Just largely, probably because maybe there are some slight character inconsistencies between Clara in the first book and in the second, or Kara. I think her name's Kara. I was reading a different book recently that had a Clara, I think. But this book doesn't follow that character. The main character of the first book is in the second book, and is actually probably a very strong supporting character. But we follow Mr. Snakes, and she is fascinating. And the world we get to follow outside the city walls, fascinating. It is a very strong discussion about the role of violence and in protest, whether you agree with that or not. It's just a very interesting thing to look at. What rehabilitation can look like for those who have enacted violent crimes. How communities can look different than what we have set up. It was so interesting. And then just add on to it, like, the sci-fi drama of people are being killed and they don't know why, and does it have to do with that multi-dimensional stuff? I had a lot of fun. It was great. Great continuation. I would have to reread both close to each other to know which one I liked more, but, like, I had a fantastic time. All right, number 5 is the Burning Kingdoms trilogy, which I have a should you read for this. I will say the Lotus Empire is probably my least favorite in the series, but that said, I still had a great time. And, like, on reread, who could say what could happen to my reading of it, knowing where things go and, like, being emotionally prepared. I think the book wanted to gut punch me, and I don't think I was gut punched, but that's also just me. But I also read this with a couple people, and there were just some things in the ending that were very fast and very unexplained, and you're just like, whoa, okay, and now we're here. It was very abrupt. Especially because the beginning of the Lotus Empire is so lusciously slow. And I think this series is at its best for me when it is slow and you sink into the character moments, because when it shines, it's those character interactions, it's the character reflection. That's its selling point. And it has a beautiful setting and really interesting magic and social commentary that's definitely worth exploring. But it's that character interaction and how that helps with the themes, that's where it shines. And that was still in this last book. It is a good conclusion. I think the first book in the series is just always going to be like my 5-star favorite of all time book. And this was just like a great book, if that makes sense. So that's why it's only in slot number 5. And now we are just heavy hitters. I'm just looking, I forgot what I listed as number 1, and I'm just like, oh yeah, no, that's right, actually. Number 4 is the Terra Ignota series. I have not made a should you read for this yet. I don't know if I mentioned it, I do have a should you read for the Burning Kingdoms trilogy, if you want more than just my, 30 seconds thoughts here. So, I read Terra Ignota. I've not made a video on it yet, because I'm scared. That video is going to be hard to make in my head. I need to make notes. I need to figure out what I want to talk about. But this was a series that just captured my imagination last year. The first book's my favorite, and the last book's probably the most exhausting. Does that mean it's my least favorite? I don't know, but it was the most exhausting. It was the longest. It took a lot of effort and time. I was definitely having to psych myself up to read it. But do I like the conclusion? Do I think it, delivered on its promise? For sure. The thought experiment was ambitious, and the ending is going to make you think. And that's good. The whole idea of these types of government, societal thought experiments are not to be, here is the answer. If there was an easy answer, our world would probably look very different. These are messy problems. There is no one solution. And so it is always fun to see what solutions an author brings to the table. I mentioned something similarly when I talked about the Dandelion Dynasty. It's I was so happy that when given the imaginative choice, Ken Liu took some paths that were not actually historically based. And I think that's a little similar here with Terra Ignota. And so it's at 4, not because it's my 4th favorite series I read this year, but because the last book was a lot of work. I still think it was very fulfilling. I really loved all the reveals, but it was twice as long as every other book in that series, and you felt it. And that might be part of it. That's the war book. That's where war is happening. War is exhausting. So yeah, really love that series. I've been talking about it a lot last year, but in case this is one of your first videos of mine, it's just about a far future, 200, 300 years from now, utopian world. We don't have borders anymore. The government systems are based off chosen hives, and this system has been working for 200 years without war. Tech has advanced so much, and we are getting brought into an in-world chronicle about what triggers their next big war and conflict, and the resolution of that conflict. That's the whole quartet, and it's just fascinating. It's very philosophical, though, really dense. It's not very character-focused. And I think that's what might be the hardest selling point. But, it worked for me, and I'm incredibly character-driven, so I don't know. You should probably just try it out and see if it's for yourself. Number 3, and I can't tell if this is controversial for one reason or another. I have thought about making a really short video on this one book in the series so many times. But this is Stormlight Archives. Is this an ending? No. Is it going to keep going? Yes. But it's not going to keep going for 8 to 10 years. So, Wind and Truth, we're calling it a finale for now, I guess. It's not unpopular. People agree with me on Goodreads and stuff like that. But I guess in my corner of YouTube, it is so uncool to say, I like this book, no notes. Obviously every book has flaws. My favorite books always have flaws. But, people are so, timid to say, I had a fun time reading this. It always comes with, 7 million caveats. And then when people do have critiques that I think are valid critiques, it's all laced in this language that I feel could actually make someone feel very small. A lot of people don't always like the delivery lines of some of the themes. That's okay. Some people are really going to resonate with it. I was resonating with some of the corny lines that were being said. And then I feel oh, am I just lame for liking how that's being portrayed? Is that just juvenile? Also, why is juvenile bad? I don't know. Everyone hates this one joke about poop, and I thought it was amazing. I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was clever. But I teach microbiology. So I don't know. If you liked Wind and Truth, you are not alone. It's a good book. I don't get it. And you can also have critiques. But I have been having a time trying to figure out why it is so cool to not just not like this book, but to also talk about it in a way that I think can make other people feel small. I think you can be critical about a book without making people feel like they're dumb for liking something, especially for things as personal as portrayals of mental health. I don't know. It's weird to me. I think it's fine to dislike it and like it. But also, it's so weird that it is a very well-received book, like, in the public. And it probably is like a 4.6 or 7 rating on Goodreads. But, like, on the internet, it is, woo. And also, don't even get me started on the 1-star reviews, just because Renarin has a boyfriend. Like, goodness. Anyways, I really liked this book. I had a lot of fun. Like, that's all I want when I'm reading a Stormlight book. Like, I just talked about Terra Ignota. That promised a very thoughtful thematic experience, and it delivered on that. Has Stormlight ever promised me a very in-depth thematic experience? No, it promised me themes. It didn't promise me just a fun adventure time. But it also mainly promised that I would be invested. That there would be things about this world I wanted to explore and get revelations for. That there are going to be these characters that are going through things, but I'm going to get to see them evolve and change and grow and keep going through. All of that was delivered. I've been reading it since 2010. It's been fun. It continues to be fun. And yes, it's very different. And yes, sometimes I'm really nostalgic for the intimacy of Way of Kings because it was so small. But, like, it's an epic fantasy. It had to get bigger. I don't know. I loved it. I had a great time. I have notes right over here for my updated Should You Read for Stormlight Archive. I got it. That will be filmed eventually. But that's not about, like, my opinions. So that's why I'm giving my opinions here. Like, obviously, I had a really dumb comment recently about how my review of something was biased and I was too opinionated. And I'm just like, the goal is for me to be opinionated 90% of the time. Like, that's, like, my goal. I also don't like objective reviews because it's just like, the syntax of this sentence was good. And I'm like, sure, that doesn't tell me if I'm going to have a good time, but fine, whatever. So, that was all a ramble. I really liked Stormlight Archive. I really liked Wind and Truth. Now, it's not my number 1, now is it? What does that mean? Okay, number 2 is Abby Jimenez Part of Your World series. Which, like, that series can't miss. 5 out of 5, all 3 books. And the most recent book, maybe my favorite. Like, I think about rereading these books all the time. And the last one, just for the summer, it had some crazy fun interconnections with the first 2 books. I just had such a good time. And, third act breakups, they're hit or miss. You ask every romance reader, they're like, they hate them, they love them. It depends on the execution, how long it lasts. This one was stressful, but I think perfectly executed for me and my tastes. Oh, it was so good. So that was number 2, because, like, no notes. I was incredibly entertained. And it was cathartic. And it was emotional. It was everything I wanted. Number 1 is the Indian Lake Trilogy by Stephen Graham Jones, which I have a Should You Read for. This is a weird case, where a lot of times books where the third book wasn't my favorite in the series haven't made it that far up the list, right? And also, like, I'm kind of noticing I'm not a last book is my favorite in the series type of person. It's really rare for the last book in a series to be my favorite. I would have to do an audible of all of the series I've ever read and see which ones have series enders that are like, this is amazing. But what I will say is the ending of the Indian Lake Trilogy is so, like, yes, this is how it ends. This is beautiful. I'm in love with this last chapter that I read. Oh my god, I want to restart it right now. And also, this trilogy was such a journey. You start with Jade in high school and you end with her in her 30s. And this poor town has been put through it. And because of that, the third book's not my favorite because it's heavy. It's gotta be heavy. Like, you can't go through your third slasher in a town and just keep being a campy time completely. There is loss. There's consequences. It was a time. And you're with Jade, who's, like, trying to find new ways of coping. Like, when she's first coping as a teenager by, like, doing all of the horror slasher stuff. And I love the evolution of the town, of Jade, of the lore, and how the human and supernatural evils intersect and come together. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I have a Should You Read for that series. But that's my favorite series that I finished this year based off the ending, if that makes any sense. All right, that was a rambly video, but it's January. It's time to ramble. That's how I feel. How many series did you catch up with or finish this last year? And which one was your favorite? And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, ooh, leave like a knife for slashing. I'm just so out of it, but in the best way. I'm having like a really great day. Anyways, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.